Welcome to Inside Racing. Horse breakers are often the unsung heroes of the racing industry. When these gifted horsemen start work on a nervous youngster who knows little else other than to lead and tie up, the very future of that animal is in the hands of the breaker. Australian racing boasts some of the world's best breakers, none more talented than Rick Worthington, whose skills have played a major part in the development of many Group 1 winners. Rick has had an affinity with animals from an early age, with a special fascination for young horses. It took this dynamo a few years to establish a career direction, but once he did, there was no stopping him. In recent times, Rick has set about realising another ambition to become a professional trainer, and the transition has been very impressive. We paid Rick a visit at his Warwick Farm stables on the day of the infamous Sydney dust storm. Well, Rick, it's hard to believe that somebody with a classic English name like Worthington could have Italian blood coursing through his veins. But your late dad wasn't Italian.
Yes, he was.
Family name?
Yep, my family name was Barticelli. I was born Ricky Thomas Barticelli.
Your mum was of Australian-Irish extract.
Yeah, she was is a fifth generation Australian of Irish descent, so I'm Irish-Italian.
Yeah. Now, your dad came from a long line of farmers in Italy who grew the components to make olive oil.
Yes. Yeah, they're olive farmers, and obviously over the years I've learnt a little bit about olives. Not that I know anything about it, but you know, you go from knowing nothing about it to a little bit about it.
Yeah. Now, your dad in Australia drove a bulldozer, and he was a mechanic.
Yes.
But he had absolutely nothing to do with horses.
Nothing at all. So I guess you could say I've sort of started off the horse generation started with me, I guess.
Yeah. Now, Rick, when you were just 8 years of age, you witnessed an horrific accident that no 8-year-old should ever be subjected to.
Yeah, we were, as a family, coming home from a family outing, and the whole family was in the car. I was actually in the car behind with my grandfather, a friend, and one of my sisters. And the car that my father, mother, and the rest of the family, there were 5 children, was a head-on collision with a guy on the other side of the road who was drunk, speeding, and that's what happens. It changes your life.
Yeah, you lost Dad and a baby sister.
Yes, and the rest of the family were in hospital for many months. It was horrific, but you move on, you know, you just get on with it.
Now, relatives, of course, came to the rescue, and you went to Dubbo to live with an aunt and an uncle. Yes,
it was a combination of living at Dubbo and at Bowral, and hence the commencement of the link with the Highlands.
Yeah.
And I did my schooling from that point at Bowral, and yeah, my aunt and uncle were very good to me.
The charm and the beauty of the Southern Highlands is absolutely embedded in your brain too. You love that part of the state.
Yeah, I do love it. Look, there's obviously a link there. There's a family link there. There's the growing up and going to school and the early years of, you know, going out hunting and you know, friends and what have you. So yeah, there's a very strong link that'll always be there with the Highlands for me.
We should explain at this point in our interview that Barticelli became Worthington when your mum remarried and you took your stepfather's name.
Yeah, of course. After, you know, the accident and time goes on, my mother remarried and Mr. Worthington came along, hence now my name is Rick Worthington. I obviously still continue on learning about my heritage and my family in Italy. We go over there for regular visits to learn about my heritage and our family. And but you're right. Yeah, from that point, I became Worthington.
Your fascination with horses began around about this time, but there was something about the young, unbroken horse that you couldn't resist, and you knew deep down that's what you wanted to do.
Yeah, it's funny, John, because most people will have a link. They'll have an uncle or a father or a brother or something that sort of links them into horses or links them into that sort of fascination or passion. I can't give you that answer because there's none. There's no link. It would just, for me, it was something I used to dream about. I can remember laying in my swag in the bush, dreaming about being supposedly this great horsebreaker or trying to be a horsebreaker of note. And I used to look at guys like Jimmy Wilton and you know, guys such as that and think, well, I'd love to do that one day.
Yeah.
And I used to love working with animals and trying to work out how they think and what they do and what you can do about it and such and so forth. So, yeah, I guess it, you know, how did it start? Where did it start? I don't know, but it was just something that grew inside me.
Yeah, it materialised.
Yeah, it did.
Well, Rick, when you turned 15, you felt you needed to clear the head. And what better way to do it for a young bloke than to join the Navy and see the world? And you did just that. And your first posting was to HMAS Leiwah, a land base in Western Australia.
Yes, you're right. The deputy headmaster said to me when I had one of my regular visits to his office, Worthington, he said, "You're no good here." He said, "You better go and join the army." And I tried to join the army, but I couldn't because I was too young.
Yeah.
And I was asking the same questions about the Navy, and I was too young, and I had my hand on the door about to walk out, thinking, well, I tried that, and that didn't work. And they said, oh, hang on a minute, you can join as a JR, a junior recruit. You only need to be 15 in so many months.
Yeah.
I said, that's me, and away I went.
How do you look back on that time in the Royal Australian Navy? Happy days?
Yeah, for me it was. For me it was about family because of my past. It was about stabilisation. It was about discipline. It was about becoming my own person. And I went into the Navy with $10 because, you know, as a kid, you know, after what happened, we were very poor. I went in with $10, and when I got out at the age of 18 and a half, I'd saved $15,000 and I'd seen a lot of the world. So for me, it was a really good start. It gave me a bit more confidence as a person, and you know, I achieved some things that I'm proud of. 6:30, physically on the walker. We usually taking the foot. What's your plan? You got to do that foot up.
Back into civilian life, and probably still feeling a little restless, you headed off for the stock camps of the Northern Territory and the fabulous Kimberleys area of Western Australia. There was one particular property in WA known as Mabel Downs that covered an acre or two.
Yeah, Mabel Downs was approximately 8,000 square kilometres at the time, and it went across toward Halls Creek and back across, and actually a little place called Turkey Creek was inside Mabel Downs, as was the Bungle Bungles, which is now a national park. And there was only one paddock on the property. It was about a 70,000 acre paddock around the station, and it was wild. The cattle were wild, the horses were wild, and you had to track your cattle to find them, and everything you did was hard. And I figured that I was either going to learn to ride or it'd kill me, one or the other. So you were pretty much on a horse from sort of 4ish in the morning through till you couldn't see at night. And in between busters and dusting yourself off, there was a lot of action, and I learned a bit.
Well, with the jackarooing years behind you, it was time to establish your identity as a breaker and a pre-trainer of thoroughbred horses. Now, you kicked off on your beloved Southern Highlands on a little place called Retford Farm.
Yeah.
And that's where you came into contact with a great grey horse, destined to become one of our best ever sprinters.
Yeah, that's very true. I bought a little property not far from there, and I cut a heap of timber and built some bush yards and stables, and I was starting off at the time, breaking in a few horses, wanting to build my business, and I had the opportunity to go to Retford Farm, which I was grateful for, and I took that. And that grey horse was Scalaci, and the rest is history. I was just lucky enough to have been able to ride him.
Now, what are your memories of him early on? Easy to break in?
Yeah, he had a great temperament. He was relaxed. He was a lovely, big, loose, floppy horse. And I always remember he had those big open knees, and even then, really, obviously not knowing much myself, I knew enough to know, well, the horse is going to be better later on, and but he just had that lovely, relaxed manner about him, and what an athlete. No, look, you can't forget horses like that.
Well, Rick, there was a property down there on the Southern Highlands called Vine Lodge that was just waiting for Rick Worthington. 240 acres at Exeter, and it was owned by a prominent owner-breeder in Roy Isaacs. Now, somehow you convinced him that he should lease it to you.
Well, it was time for me to either have a go or forget about it. It was time for me to have a go. So I approached Roy, and it was very kind of him to give me the opportunity. I took the opportunity and started to build a business. And it was at about that time where I met my lovely wife, Dawn.
You can say your darling on this show.
My darling
wife,
problem. Dawn. Yeah, no, my darling wife, Dawn. And my best friend, my soulmate. Dawn and I went to school together. And of course I was besotted with Dawn at school, but because I was one of these grubby little kids that did their jobs at home, by the time I got to school, I was a bit of a mess. I wasn't noticed by Dawn.
Yeah.
But I didn't give up, and eventually I got her to notice me. Dawn and I had started to see one another about the same time, and it wasn't long after that that we were married, and it wasn't long after that that Dawn, myself, and the three young kids went out to another property, which our business was growing so quickly. You know, at the time...
We're looking at photos of the kids as we speak here, so we better introduce them.
Okay, well, our eldest is our son Garth, and our daughter Brooke and Courtney.
There's one other person that deserves commendation here. A man who came into your life during this period who taught you so much. A remarkable horseman called Henry Davies.
That's right. Henry Davies came into my life around the mid-80s. I was at Retford Farm at the time, and I thought I was going pretty well with the breaking in. You know, I was quite happy with where I was at. And Henry said to me, just turned up out of the blue, asked if he could ride some of my horses, and he said to me, you've taken charge of the front end, but you haven't taken charge of the back end. Yeah. And I said, well, what do you mean? And he helped me to fill in pictures of the puzzle that I wouldn't have been able to fill in myself. So, of course, I'm forever grateful. As it's worked out, and I didn't know this at the time, but Henry is my wife Dawn's uncle.
Goodness me.
Right? So now you've got his father has taught him, and I ended up employing Henry, and I thought it was the cheapest, really, learning for me. I mean, whatever I spent in employing Henry was the greatest lessons I've ever had, really.
Yeah. Now, Rick, clientele. you've been blessed with some remarkable people and some very high-profile people. And one of the biggest shocks you ever got in your life was the day you picked up the phone and a bloke called Tommy Smith was on the other end.
Yeah.
You didn't believe it at first.
No, I didn't. I hadn't long started my own business, and I was driving out to Vine Lodge, and I got a call from TJ, and he asked me if I could break in some horses for him. I tried to stay nice and calm because I was very excited, and of course he told me what he wanted and what he expected, and that was the start of, for me, what was a great learning curve, and it was the beginning of a lot of wonderful things, because of course what flowed on from that was his daughter Gay, who I'm also very grateful for the work, because people like Gay and Tommy are the ultimate professionals. They have systems, and they're very good with systems, and someone in my position who knew nothing about systems and dealing with large numbers, and you can learn so much off so many people, and I learned a lot in that period, and I would hope that I helped them in getting some pretty good horses to win some pretty good races. And of course, other people like Lee Friedman, John Massara, Arrowfield. I mean, we did their work for many, many years, and the list goes on. The Flemings. I mean, it's always hard answering these questions, John, because you miss someone, and then I walk away 10 minutes later and go, oh, gee, I forgot Joe Blow or Jimmy Bloggs. I mean, I'm very grateful to all, the major clients, and not just major clients, but people that supported me. With 1 and 2 horses. Of course, because there were some pretty good 1 and 2 horses as well. People like Joe O'Gara, who always had a group winner every 2 years. Yeah. And, I mean, they come from all over the place, as you know. I mean, looking at the list of horses to pass through your hands reads like a who's who of thoroughbred racing. And I'm just going to drop a few equine names here, but there's one in particular that I happen to know you lost a bit of sleep over. His name was Flying Spur. He was arrogant, he was overbearing, and he wanted it all his own way, but you wouldn't let him. No, I remember him well, because Flying Spur was a very dominant horse. He was very strong-willed, and he wanted a good tune-up twice a week, or he'd want to ride out the checks. He was the man, and he was a good horse to work with, but there wasn't a great margin for error. And I know you've got to be careful sitting down saying these things, but I must say, I thought to myself, this horse is going to be something pretty special. Yeah. And I don't mean that in an egotistical way, but he had, I'm going to be a group horse written all over him, and he was very special, and through everyone concerned handling and dealing with that horse, isn't it lucky he didn't end up a gelding? Horses like that a lot of the time don't stay colts because of their attitude, and he ended up being a leading stallion in this country. You broke in and educated a lovely horse called March Hare, who won several Group 1 races and came to an untimely end when he broke down at Randwick. Yeah, it was very sad. I mean, that's sad devastating for the owners and the trainer, but sad for everyone. Nobody likes to see that. But, look, as I said before, I feel blessed and very privileged to have been able to have had a lot to do with some really nice horses. I mean, horses like in Costa del Lago, Exceed and Excel, Barishnikov, Nothing Like a Dane. I mean, without missing any, but there's other horses that have come through our gates as well, like the likes of Pharaoh and the Juggler, and I mean, it goes on and on. I mean, where do you stop? Yeah. Basically, we were very lucky to have, I guess, been chosen to have had those horses sent to us, and I would hope we did them justice, and if we help their careers, well then that's nice, but it was a privilege.
Nothing Like a Dane is the leader, but Octagonal is starting to fly home down the outside. Nothing Like a Dane about to be tackled by Octagonal, who's coming at him, but Nothing Like a Dane is fighting on. Nothing Like a Dane wins the Derby.
Rick, there's one horse you mentioned who deserves special mention. Nothing Like a Dane, who won the Victoria Derby. And I know his part owner, Helen Dalton, agonised over the decision at Tommy Smith's insistence to run Nothing Like a Dane in the Melbourne Cup as a 3-year-old. And didn't he run a hell of a race?
Yeah, he was amazing. Nothing Like a Dane had a heart like a lion. And I guess for me it's special because, I don't know why, but Helen turned up at the farm one day. She'd visit to have a look at the horse, of course. And she actually gave me the owner's trophy for the Derby, which I felt
bowled over by.
Oh yeah, I felt very special. So once again, look, you know, we just helped them in the initial stages. You know, the trainer, as in Gay and Tommy, and the owner. They take it from there. I mean, we're only doing the initial bit, but look, if we can, as I said before, he was a very difficult personality as well, and if we were able to help him along his way and assist in that period, well, then once again, I feel lucky that we were there at the time.
Rick, John Massara is a name you mentioned earlier, of Arrowfield Stud. He's been a valued client, and he was also one of the first to recognise that you were a frustrated trainer. That's true, isn't it?
That's true. John Massara and my wife, the pair of them. Yeah. We had been owners and still are owners of racehorses. And I had it coming from both ends. My wife one end and John Massara the other. And they were both telling me that I'm nothing but a frustrated trainer. When am I going to get a licence?
Yeah.
Understandably, from my point of view, I was intimidated, scared, call it whatever you like, to take out a licence, even though I was keen to do so, because I was worried that it would
adversely affect
our current business.
Your business, yeah.
You know, we had a business where we were dealing with prominent owners, prominent trainers, and of course, you know, from my end, it wouldn't have made any difference, but sometimes people's perception can be what it can be. So
of course.
I initially got my licence. I was very sheepish about it. You could say right or wrong, I was. That's a fact.
Well, Rick, the winners have been flowing freely in the 6 years since you took out that trainer's licence. Here's one early in the piece that you part-owned. He was very promising. A horse called War of the Worlds. But you had to make a business decision where he was concerned.
War of the Worlds was, without doubt, a group horse. We bought him as a yearling at the Magic Millions. Ross Kirk, his wife Denise, myself and Dawn were the owners. We broke him in, educated him and trained him. He had 3 starts in Australia. He was undefeated. War of the Worlds was subsequently sold to Hong Kong because of, obviously, built a lot of pressure and the price kept increasing. And he went on in Hong Kong to win approximately $7 million Hong Kong.
Star of Louis was a nice horse, winner of a Heritage Stakes.
Star of Louis was bought for the princely sum of $16,000 from a sale, the Inglis size produce sale, which is now non-existent. And he won about $100,000 in prize money from less than a handful of starts. He ran 4th in the Pago and won the Heritage Stakes. And he also went to Hong Kong for approximately, and in fact a little bit more money than War of the Worlds, but around the same money. You know, you've got to make a decision sometimes based on common sense business practices. So, I mean, bittersweet, but was another one that went to Hong Kong.
Tell me about Steel Giant. He was one of your favourites.
Yeah, Steel Giant is a very special horse. He won a number of races leading up to the Canberra Guineas. He won. We actually targeted the Canberra Guineas. He won that. From there, he was beaten 1.5 lengths by Weekend Hustler in the Randwick Guineas, and we went on from there. Now, obviously, the same thing happened. We were offered money that...
Irresistible.
Yeah. And he went to Hong Kong as well. Now, I say again, as a trainer, you could say, well, gee, you know, it's a bit unintelligent. You know, you could have had 3 definitely potential group horses, where that puts you in the standing as a trainer.
Yeah.
But you also don't want to go broke because of your ego.
No.
So you've got to be a bit sensible. But there are other good horses there to be bought. That's our challenge. We're there to go to the sales and select these horses and get them going, and they'll come through.
Now, Rick, plenty of other winners. Unrestrained,
Yeah.
Mr. Barticelli, General Cromwell, Elusive Song, who won under a big weight one day, Trotsky, Portuguese. So the winners have been flowing freely, and you're having a great time.
Yeah, well, as I said to you before, we're a young stable. We're growing and building a business. As you know, we've recently moved to Warwick Farm. I think that in itself indicates that we're serious about what we're doing. I think that indicates that we want to take this to a level of the utmost professionalism.
Yep.
We want to achieve our goals. Our targets that we've set are high, and it will continue to grow and develop from here. We just have to work hard and be consistent and stay focused. And as you know, we've just got to do our bit. We're very passionate about it, and I'm looking forward to this being the next challenge.